Welcome to UAWD's first part of delegate training. My name is Scott Holdison. I'll be your host today. And let me tell you a little bit about myself. I'm a UAW member for 32 years. I work at Ford Chicago Assembly Plant. I've been a delegate to the last 3 constitutional conventions. And we'll be talking throughout the day today, throughout this presentation, about what delegates do. What is the role of delegates at the Constitutional Convention? So this presentation is a presentation of Unite All Workers for Democracy, UAWD. UAWD is a caucus within the UAW, and we are have been working to root corruption and cronyism out of our union. And we've been advocates for the one member, one vote. And we're successfully won that referendum, and we're excited to move on to direct elections for international officers. But the delegates to the Constitutional Convention still play a very important role in our union. I'd like to remind everyone this is the first part of a 2-part series. The second part is going to be about how to win elections and run for delegate to the convention. Very important part of this training. First, the UAW convention, held every 4 years, has a huge impact on UAW members. So why are delegates to the Constitutional Convention so important? So we need great delegates to the Constitutional Convention to nominate great candidates for the elections. We need delegates to pass our reform agenda. We need delegates to fight corruption and win back concessions. We need delegates like you to build a better UAW together. So one of the most important roles of delegates to the Constitutional Convention is amending the UAW Constitution. The UAW Constitution can only be amended by a majority vote of delegates at succeeding regular conventions, constitutional conventions, or special conventions. So, for example, in 2010, delegates approved transferring $25 million from the strike fund to the International General Fund in each of the next 4 years. So in 2010, 2011, 2012, and 2013, $25 million was transferred from the strike fund to the general fund because of an amendment to the Constitution in the 2010 Constitutional Convention. That's $100 million in 4 years. At the 2014 Constitutional Convention, delegates approved an increase in union dues from 2 hours per month to 2.5 hours per month because the strike fund was getting low. Obviously, those transfers out of the strike fund into the general fund had a lot to do with why the strike fund was getting low. In 2018, delegates approved an increase in compensation for International Executive Board members of 31%, tied to the salaries of international servicing reps. Now, as you can imagine, none of these resolutions or amendments to the Constitution were passed by local unions. These were all pushed through by the International Executive Board through their handpicked Constitution Committee. So Article 8, Section 16 of the UAW Constitution describes the process of selecting the Constitution Committee. And in that, it says the International Executive Board shall select from the credentials to of the delegates a Constitution Committee, which shall meet 2 weeks ahead of the convention. This committee is supposed to take up recommendations concerning changes or additions to the Constitution submitted by international officers, International Executive Board, and local unions to act on. The committee shall also have the authority to originate amendments to the Constitution. So as you can see, they list first that this committee is supposed to take up the suggestions of international officers. At the 2018 Constitutional Convention, delegates voted to approve amendments to 8 different articles of the UAW Constitution. There's not a single proposal that did not win the approval from the delegates. All of the amendments approved were from the report of the handpicked Constitution Committee. These were the amendments that the corrupt Williams-Jones administration caucus proposed. Most of the proposals submitted by local unions did not get included in that. Those required 147 delegates to support reporting them out of committee. Delegate Scott Holdison, that's me, yours truly, asked for a direct election amendment to be brought out of committee. Now, we saw with the results of the referendum that the direct election of international officers has huge support in the membership. All I needed was 147 delegates to be able to debate it. But we didn't even have 147 delegates backing me up on that to be able to debate whether we should directly elect our international officers. It doesn't have to be like this. So let me play a little video for you. This is from the last Constitutional Convention.
From Local 551 in Chicago. Region 4 under the directorship of Ron McElroy, and Assistant Director Brad Dutcher. I rise to speak against this resolution, and I have the support of my entire delegation in speaking against this resolution after consulting with them. I'd also like to commend the Constitution Committee for coming up with a creative solution to the 2 hours. Reverting back to 2 hours. My issue isn't with that. Temporary workers in this union, and in my local in particular, get no bonuses. They work less than 40 hours in a week. They're in a precarious situation. They're on potentially years of extended probationary status. Basically, they're oppressed. Yet, in violation of the constitutional changes that were made by this body 4 years ago, they've been paying 2.5 hours of union dues rather than 1.44%. I see you have a way in here to claw that out. That doesn't correct what was done 4 years ago. Those folks need to be reimbursed. New language in this Constitution referring to non-traditional sector being the ones that are afforded the percentage rather than the 2.5 hours if they're part-time enshrines division in our Constitution, and I think that's a shame. Traditional and non-traditional part-time workers will be treated differently under the due structure of our Constitution, and that's wrong. I'd like to pivot now to the $180 million threshold. And under that threshold, the dues will revert back to 2 hours per month. I think that's a good idea, it's a creative idea. But I want to know what mechanism will allow the strike fund to continue to grow once we get to that $850 million and revert back to the 2 hours. Is the interest from the strike fund going to remain in the strike fund? No. Will the 13th rebate check be eliminated or reduced? No. Will the monthly rebates be eliminated or reduced? Is there any mechanism to continue to grow the strike fund after we reach that $180 million threshold that allows the strike fund to continue to grow? Is there any mechanism to allow that?
Only of the choice if the executive board keeps interest in there. That's it. But the Constitution allows all the entrants rebates that go to the local unions, well, interest to international local unions for rebates.
For those reasons, and most specifically, because we're enshrining division between traditional and non-traditional into our sacred Constitution, I stand in opposition to this amendment. And furthermore, I would love right now to be able to offer an amendment because there are good parts to this. I'd love to be able to offer an amendment, but unfortunately, the rules do not allow that. We addressed that yesterday. So, because we cannot amend it to make equity possible in our Constitution, I recommend this delegation to vote against it, and my entire delegation will vote against this resolution.
Okay, that was a speech that I gave at the last Constitutional Convention. And as you can see, I had support for a lot of the things that I was saying, but in the end, the delegates did not vote it down and send it back to committee to be amended. So it passed as was. We need to elect responsible delegates who are committed to reforming our union and preventing abuses of our dues dollars. Reform starts with delegates like you and I. Okay, another role that delegates to the Constitutional Convention play is passing resolutions, debating resolutions that are going to chart the course for the UAW over the next 4 years. So at the 2018 convention, we debated a lot of resolutions. One of them was building power by organizing. So part of that resolution read, we resolve to remain conscious that the power of collective bargaining and organizing are intertwined. We must develop organizing strategies that have a direct positive impact on collective bargaining and develop bargaining strategies that enhance the ability of workers to organize. We resolve to continue global solidarity efforts with unions around the world. Okay, it all sounds great. We also debated and voted on resolutions regarding education for a strong union, an economy that works for working people. In that resolution, they talked about we're working to build an economy that includes full employment, greater emphasis on job and wage growth and policymaking, safety net for displaced workers, a fair day's pay for a fair day's work. For decades, workers' wages increase with rising productivity and the strong union contracts. What they didn't mention was that they've included tiers and temps in those supposedly strong union contracts. And then we debated industrial policy, creating a roadmap to lead, strengthening our political voice. And, you know, they reiterated that the UAW has long maintained that the bread box is linked to the ballot box. We must continually be engaged in the political arena so that our hard-won gains at the collective bargaining table cannot be taken away with the stroke of a pen, both at the national and state levels. We talked about universal health care. We talked about protecting and strengthening Social Security. We talked about trade policy. And in that discussion, before we support a trade deal, it must include recognition and protection through strong and effective enforcement mechanisms of global labor rights, mechanisms to preserve and expand U.S. manufacturing employment, enforcement of strong environmental standards, meaningful and enforceable provisions to prevent currency manipulating by our trading partners. So all of these are, wonderful resolutions. Even though they were passed, there wasn't a whole lot that the union did to support these and try and make them happen. So let's see how resolutions are talked about at the convention. So here's another video I'm going to play for you.
Resolution, but out of concern again that the language is too weak, specifically the section benefiting from productivity improvements. Nowhere in this resolution do I see the simple but necessary and timely phrase, shorter work week with no cut in pay. This nearly became law not 5 or 10 years ago, but in 1933, a bill to establish the 30-hour work week was passed by the Senate, but narrowly failed the House. The demand, 30 for 40, was the one demand of the Flint sit-down that we still have yet to achieve. It has been relevant for decades, even in the days when simple mechanical automation began to do the jobs done by people. But now, today, the technology has grown, as you said, exponentially beyond what any of us could have imagined even a few years ago. And in the hands of profit-hungry corporations, it serves one and only one purpose, and that is to slash the workforce in order to maximize profits. Therefore, we need to demand not just another paid holiday or two, but we need to demand a shorter work week with no cut in pay, and we need to get rid of alternative work schedules in the process. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, that was UAWD Steering Committee member Martha Gravatt speaking on the need for 30 for 40, which was not part of that resolution, but you know, it's an important topic. So, and then the final resolution in the resolution book was a resolution honoring Dennis Williams. At that convention, it said we bestowed the title of President Emeritus on Dennis and authorizing the availability of a cabin at Blackleg for his use at no personal cost whenever he is staying in the facility. The resolution did not say that we would build a cabin for him with non-union labor paid for in part by auto company contributions. But that's what happened. And that's what happens when you elect leaders that are not committed to doing what's right for the membership and are more concerned about doing what's right for themselves. Another role that delegates play at the convention, at previous conventions, delegates nominated and elected candidates to the UAW International Executive Board. The monitor, now the membership is going to be directly electing candidates, but who gets on the ballot? The monitor hasn't established all the rules yet, but one thing, after talking to the monitor, we expect that those rules will include a place for nominations for candidates to the International Executive Board to take place at the convention. You know, we need to get again, we need to get delegates elected that will be there to nominate the candidates that we want on the ballot that are going to push for reforms and push for better contracts. Those candidates include the International Executive Board, which are the president, the secretary treasurer, 3 vice presidents, also candidates for International Executive Board members, also known as regional directors, will be nominated likely at the convention, and then by members from their regions. and delegates from their regions, and then elected by members from their regions. A lot of other international unions nominate their international officers at their conventions. For instance, the Teamsters and the longshore workers do it that way. Other international unions that have direct elections do have different processes. But it seems that the monitor is leaning towards having the nominations at the convention. So delegates to the Constitutional Convention also serve as delegates to the Special Bargaining Convention. And this is a very good point to bring up when you're campaigning as a delegate, that you're not just campaigning to nominate somebody, or you're not just campaigning to amend the Constitution, but you're campaigning to fight for better contracts. And that's what the delegates to the bargaining convention do. So at the 2019 Special Bargaining Convention, we discussed a lot of important topics. We talked about outsourcing, precarious work, training to keep up with technology, political action, and VCAP. But as you can see, the Special Bargaining Convention resolution covers a lot of important topics. The International Executive Board, again, handpicks the resolutions committee that decides what will be on the agenda for discussion. So let me play a little video for you again of Delegate Kathy Smith speaking at the bargaining convention.
Affectionately known to me as Mr. 3000. The Assistant Director, the charismatic Al Wilson. I stand in support of this resolution because it's inhumane the way we treat our temps. I would ask anybody in this hall today that can go 2 or 3 years without an absence. Now, our temps are allowed 3 occurrences that either be absence or tardies. They have no vacation days. They have no personal days. We work in between 2 train tracks that hinder our opportunity to get to work on time unless you're 30 minutes early. Is there anybody here, please stand, if you think you could accomplish that task? They're forced to work 6 days a week, 10 hours a day. They pay dues, just like you and I, but they do not have the representation that we have. This is almost, in my opinion, worse than an at-will employment. At least if you're at will, you know where management's coming from. Here we pay dues and can still be walked out at any time. They are fearful for their jobs. Excuse me. I've been a tradesman for over 30 years. 30 years ago, it was acceptable to be sexually harassed. It was part of the price women paid to be in the trades. I see young women in my work site being sexually harassed on an everyday occurrence. It sickens me. They're afraid to call their union steward. They're afraid to go to labor because essentially they are an at-will employee. At any time, they can be walked out. Now, they put in more hours than a lot of the Tier 1s and Tier 2s do because they're forced to work 6 days with no vacation and no personal time to take. But yet, when we got our $5,500 bonus, which I am grateful for, they got nothing. There is no 401 match like the Tier 2s get. They have no prescription coverage on their medical. and these people are working years and years at the corporation. We need a clear path if we're going to keep this temporary situation. They need a clear path of when they will be rolled over to a full-time employee. So with that, I stand in support of this resolution. Thank you.
Thank you, sister.
So GM, you'll recall at the end of 2018 announced plans to close at least 4 UAW represented plants while making historic profits. Production commitment was part of the overall resolution book, but that topic was not on the agenda, the printed agenda for debate. New workers in many sectors no longer have a defined benefit pension. Pension benefits for workers who still have them have been stagnant. Part of the resolution included retirement income, but again, it wasn't on the agenda for debate. Many of our employers are demanding more cost sharing on healthcare. Co-pays, co-insurance, and deductibles have all been rising for workers in many sectors of the union. There was a section in the resolution about healthcare, but that was not on the agenda for debate. At the 2019 Special Bargaining Convention, Delegate Scott Holdison, yours truly, made a motion to add these important topics to the agenda for debate. His motion was ruled out of order. He appealed from the decision of the chair. Had there been enough reform-minded delegates at the 2019 Special Bargaining Convention who could have backed him up to help overrule the chair, we could have raised important demands for the upcoming round of bargaining. So while we often say that the membership is the highest authority, and we should say that, you won't find that phrase anywhere in the UAW Constitution. Here's what the Constitution does say. The highest tribunal shall be the International Convention, composed of delegates democratically elected by the membership of local unions. That authority has been usurped by a corrupt administration caucus. We need to have concerned members like you to stand up and take that authority back. So how do you get to be a delegate? You get to be a delegate to the UAW Constitutional Convention by getting elected by members of your local union. Delegates cannot be appointed, they have to be elected. The call to the International UAW Constitutional Convention has gone out already. The Secretary Treasurer issued that call about a week ago, I think. Each local union will get a convention call letter letting them know exactly how many delegates their local union is entitled to. So watch and ask about the announcement of the dates for nominations and elections for delegates at your local union. So make sure you're asking the officers, the president, the financial secretary, the recording secretary. Those are the folks that'll know when the call letter is in their hands, and those will be the ones that are planning the nominations meeting. So pay attention to that. Okay, the convention will be run by Robert's Rules of Order and also by special rules of the Constitutional Convention. Those rules sometimes get in the way of democratic procedures, and we should take a look at that in future when we convene for the convention this time. We're going to have trainings on Robert's Rules of Order and also discuss the rules to the Constitutional Convention and what rules in particular are a problem that's holding up the democratic processes. So with that, I'm going to ask anybody, go ahead and shout out, what are the roles of convention delegates from this training?
Vote on resolution.
Correct.
Amending the Constitution.
Correct.
Setting the agenda for bargaining.
Yes. And also probably nominating candidates for international executive board offices. So great. I see you were paying attention. Don't forget, delegates elected now serve at the special bargaining convention in 2023. Watch out for the notice of delegate elections at your local union. And UAWD is here to help. We've got 2 terrific staff organizers that are reaching out to folks every day, trying to help you run for delegate to the convention and answer your questions and help you build a successful delegate campaign. So don't hesitate to reach out to us and become a member. We need to work together to get this done. And we do great things when we work together, when we pool our resources. So go to www.uawd.org/join and become a member of UAWD. It's $25 for a year-long membership. And, you know, we put that money to good use doing things like this training, for instance. And also we did a lot of work organizing for the one member, one vote for the referendum. We sent flyers all over the place. We're going to have to do more informational flyers and stuff like that in the lead up to the convention. And so join UAWD today, become a member, and help build a better UAW together. Okay, and that concludes this training. But tomorrow is delegate training part 2, how to run and win your delegate elections.